Everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers. With me today is one of my friends and brothers, Salvador, and then uh, correct me if I'm wrong, Chalchihuitzilli.
Good enough.
Okay, perfect. Salvador is a ceremonialist. He's a qualified mental health specialist and a sports coach. And I consider you amazing spiritual teacher. So welcome on the podcast, brother.
Thank you for welcoming, brother. Good to see you again. Thank you for reaching out. And it's a pleasure to be connecting you in this way and sharing and breaking bread and see what Spirit has for us within this container.
Yeah, amazing, man. Thank you so much. And I think today we're gonna focus on a few things. Like I would love to hear about your spiritual journey, how you came to walk these ways. I would love to hear and share about the medicine of San Pedro, and maybe if we have time, we can talk a little bit about Sweat Lodge and the power of these different types of medicines. So. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Excuse me if you heard like a little ring. Somebody was calling me and connected to my computer, so excuse me for that. Yeah, so before I even speak, I just want to say or ask actually, would you like me to start from where I'm from or directly straight to the medicine path?
Uh, yeah, just start with where you're from and your background and a little bit about yourself, and then we can just dive into the medicine path. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, cool. Well, my full name is Salvador J. Melgoza. Again, like the brother mentioned, my Mexica name is Chalchihuitzilli, meaning jade hummingbird. It's
Mm.
in the language of Nahua, which is the language of the Mexicas, aka the Azteca. That's one of my lineages from my father's side, and from my mother's side, I am also Purépecha from Michoacán, Mexico. Born and raised here in Los Angeles, grew up in Watts, California, currently living in Topanga Canyon. Just moved here a couple weeks ago. And yeah, to dwell into how did this path exactly opened up for me? That's a great question. And a lot of people would assume that my first medicine would be an entheogenic thing, right? Whatever this is connected to that path.
Hmm.
And the thing is, as I learned throughout this journey, like everything that is aligned with this path or this road doesn't have to be an excuse me, an entheogenic medicine.
Hmm.
So my first medicine that opened up these doorways for me was actually the sport of lacrosse.
Mm.
And
Okay.
if you didn't know, or if anybody doesn't know this, lacrosse has been a huge staple in my life. I'm still heavily involved. I'm currently the head coach at USC for the women's club lacrosse program. And fun fact was full circle moment. My first coach was actually a graduate from USC. So
Mm.
when I shared the news to him, he was like, "What? Like, congratulations." But to backtrack a little bit, so lacrosse is actually an indigenous sport of the Onondaga Nation back east, and they would actually call it the stick game to keep it more short. There's different names for it. And the term lacrosse came from the French,
Mm.
lacrosse,
Hmm.
so that name just really stuck. And I'm really excited to see lacrosse to be back in the Olympics in 2028. So I'm really
Nice.
excited to see how that unfolds. So that was my first medicine. That was pretty much my first activation of the connection to creator, of it being a medicine and why we play for ancestors and all these beautiful things and the connection to the stick itself, I wish I had a stick with me at this moment, but I unfortunately do not. Um, but to connect that to the Red Road specifically, I had a Native American teammate who sent me a peyote song from the Native American church, and it was a Diné prayer called Good Relations by Kevin Yazzie.
Mm.
And when he sent me that song, it was during like a really dark phase of my life. And when I listened to it, it just hit something deep within my core that just completely changed me.
Mm.
Um, and through that journey, I would work with it during meditations, during certain practices, etc. So that's how the peyote ways kind of opened up for me, or at least the exposure
Hmm.
through the music. I knew what the medicine was, but when it comes to the traditions, I had no clue.
Hmm.
Now, when it comes to specifically ceremony, that's a very interesting question because ceremony opened up for me through the music industry.
Mm,
Uh,
okay.
I was a supervisor at the farm for a couple of years. I was a heavy participant in the club, rave scene, etc., the festival scene, all these things.
Hmm.
So through that journey, I've just radically expressed myself and I would just meet the right people. They'll invite me to places. And I remember the first quote unquote burner party I was invited to in LA. So for anybody that doesn't know what a burner party is, it's pretty much a party or a celebration of life that is in relations or branch of something in relations to Burning Man,
Hmm.
right? So through that, I was exposed to Hape. I
Hmm.
was exposed to Hape, and I was going through a really tough time during that chapter of my life, and it was like the hammer of God just came and just bam,
So
you
for
know.
those that don't know, what is Hape?
Well, you could spell it two different ways, Hape or Rape with a little sign on top. I would prefer to spell it with the H for many
Right.
reasons for people
Right.
that don't know.
Right.
So you can say Hape or Rape.
Hmm.
A lot of people could say it a little differently. So to answer your question more specifically, the main key component and medicine of Rape is tobacco,
Hmm.
purely fine grated down tobacco. Think of powdered sugar, but in tobacco form. That's the best way I can describe it for anybody here that has no idea of what the consistency feels like or the
Hmm.
texture. Now, there's hundreds of different types of rapes, depending on the lineage, depending on who it's made by, what's in it, and each one has a different purpose. Now, I won't get into too many details about that. I'm not gonna make anything up. I just know for a fact that the main key component is tobacco.
Hmm.
And from my understanding, I believe I have a tool. Would you actually want me to show what a tool looks like for hot bear, or do you just want me to leave it be?
You can show it. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it'll be quick. I'm just grab my bag.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Um,
So there's two administration tools, right? There's the Caripe, which is a self-administration tool, and then there's the Tepi, which is an administration of uh, a medicine man or woman administering to the other person, right?
Correct. Correct. So I cannot find my regular hot bay bag, unfortunately. However, I do have my Step B on me, which is the one you use to administer other people.
Hmm.
And for me personally, this one specifically has been a very powerful key component that has completely shifted my life. And it's been a beautiful medicine that has assisted in my clarity and just journey, right? So, anyways, this was my first introduction to anything in regards of ceremony,
Hmm.
that specific gathering, and it was really intense, really really intense. The one thing I will say is it's really important for anybody listening to this to make sure people are trauma informed, making sure if it's their first time, making sure they know how to receive it to properly guide them, because I was not properly guided of how to
Hmm.
receive it. So the experience itself was a little traumatizing of like coughing and just really unpleasant, not traumatizing, just really unpleasant.
Hmm.
But throughout time, I built a healthy relationship. So with that said, this right here is Tepi. This one's from Peru, but the main key component and the main concept of these tools specifically is one end goes into the nose of the individual, and the other end is the person serving. So all you're doing is basically blowing it into their nose. There's different types of blows, a fast one, a short one, a powerful one, and a very soft one. And they all
Hmm.
have different names, just to give you a context. But yeah. Anyway, so that was my first time being exposed to rapé. And in that same gathering, just by radically expressing myself, right? The individual who served me Hape, and I won't mention names just out of respect of her own privacy. I have a lot of love for her, and she was actually one of my first mentors, and I love her so much. Um, she invited me to my first San Pedro ceremony.
Okay.
Yeah, she invited me to my first San Pedro ceremony, led by a woman, and it was a very healing experience for me, and through that, of course, all these other doors opened up with other medicines like gambo, ayahuasca, yahe, bufo, 5-MeO, honguitos, and all things like that. Now, before I even go further with anything like that, I to backtrack a little bit, I'm not here to say that I wasn't experienced with any entheogenics at all. Of
Hmm.
course, with the party scene and things like that, I've done a lot of XYZs that have led me to the position I'm in today to have the capacity for that. And I have tried mushrooms. Mushrooms were actually my first entheogenic substance that I received within my body, aside from Santa Maria, or should I say shuru? That's how the Hunikuin would call it, which is their sacrament.
Hmm.
And mushrooms, extracted ergot, and MDMA and things like that. Anything that pretty much alters your mind. And I've sat with those before. I've definitely lived that lifestyle when I was very young. I'm now 30 years old, and of course, all that's behind me, and now I'm just really focused on walking the beauty way to the best of my ability, and I'm expressing this because a lot of people are afraid to talk about their past. A lot of people are afraid to be vulnerable like this, like none of us are perfect. And I can honestly say that that lifestyle that I had when I was younger allowed me to really find a part of my spirit of myself to express it and to attract the right communities, to attract the right people that want to support me and see me grow, and with those experiences, I try my best to recreate those experiences in different formats, whether it's that entertainment industry, whether it's ceremony, whether it's whatever that looks like, because these experiences have shifted me. And why wouldn't we want to share that experience with someone else that can cause that ripple effect, that prayer to spread out? Um,
Absolutely. I mean, it gives contrast, right?
100%.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of my friends and a lot of people on these paths have had that party lifestyle and have been in that world, and I think for myself, I needed to experience those things to understand how I was really craving something deeper, something more connected to my heart and to my soul. And those were just the ways that I knew how to connect to people and be in community. And I think that for some people, that was the only way they knew how to be in community and connect.
100%. And just to kind of like connect both realms of, ceremony in general, and ceremony could be branched in many different ways. But there's a couple of festivals that I can bring up, and one specifically that I kept fire for this year, and it was for Lightning in the Bottle. I kept
Mm,
fire for the elders to do the ceremonies, the invocations, and we held that space, that container for people in the festival that are going through the festivities to come pray, ground, and to keep that energy clear from, all the things that pop up within those containers.
that's
And
beautiful.
to be in that position, like sober and really like sharing this experience or this wisdom, this ancestral wisdom with people that have no idea of the basics of how to connect with the fire, how to pray with it, and something as simple as that, and expressing how that connects to every single one of us at the end of the day, doesn't matter where we're from. It really hits their heart, because a lot of people that go to festivals, in my opinion, from my perspectives, yes, you're there to have fun, but you hit it the nail on the head where everybody's looking for something deeper, and that's that connection,
Hmm.
so when we create that container and have them go home with a heart filled with love, it's they want to come back. They want to rave about it, like no pun intended, but they're gonna be raving about it, like, oh my God, the sacred fire, like I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, just to add on to that a little bit, lightning in a bottle was a deeply spiritual experience for me because I was already done drinking. I had made that commitment to myself to no longer participate with alcohol, and it was my first big festival. I think there was close to 30,000 people at the one I went to in 2018,
wow.
and and this one, I searched for those types of experiences where I could connect with elders from other countries. I could learn from some of the elders. I was craving that at that time.
Mm,
And I met this woman from Peru, and she expressed how she was an ayahuasquera. She performed in a ceremony with ayahuasca, and she was drinking it herself in small microdoses every day. And she shared with me how, well, she shared with a group of people that she did a talk. She said, I am very upset at what I'm seeing here. She said, there's people bumping into me, bumping into other elders. She said, people are high and drunk and just not respecting the land. They're not connecting to themselves and to the other people. They're just getting high and doing whatever they want. And it was her first time, I think, in the US, and
mm,
she was very upset. And I came up to her after her talk, and I said, I just wanted to let you know that not everybody's here in that way. Like, I'm not taking anything. I'm completely sober. I'm here to connect with people like yourself. I'm here to learn. I'm here to understand the ways that you're teaching and walking. And I said, I have deep respect for you and for bringing your teachings here, and thank you so much. And I told her how I never had any elders, because she mentioned how where are the elders? Where are the people that are holding the space, and these people are going to for advice, for wisdom, and those kind of things. And I said, we don't really have that here, and I've had to find my way. I found Reiki first, then I found Kundalini yoga, then I found these other modalities to heal myself and to help hold space for others. And she looked at me, and I'll never forget this moment in my life. Like, she looked at me, and she put her hand on my heart, and she looked deep into my eyes and into my soul, and she said, "You are the elder." And I was like, wow. Like, I immediately started crying, and it just hit me like, we don't have to be certain age. We don't have to be
mm.
any way. I've met elders that are tiny little kids, all the way, 18-year-olds that are super advanced. And she just struck something inside me that really resonated. And so, yeah, I think these experiences need that kind of space for people to come and to sit by the fire, to have these elders teach them and talk to them. And I think there's a huge amount of people looking for that. So, deep bows to you, brother, for holding that. Thank you so much.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that experience. And there's a lot of different topics we could tap into what you just mentioned. And I just to piggyback off that, oh, excuse me. I truly believe that one force cannot exist without the other. That's universal law. And like anywhere else, there's gonna be bad apples. And especially if it's a new environment, you're gonna be kind of like looking for that. And if you focus on it, you're gonna attract it at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Sometimes you get attracted no matter what. Now, that's where it's up to us, you, me, even the woman from Peru, to hold that reverence, to be that example, to check people. Sometimes we have to invoke a certain ego within ourselves, like, excuse me, like really just like not be the aggressor, but be assertive. And that's something that I've also noticed that is lacking in a lot of, uh, in my opinion, and I could be completely wrong, in a lot of spiritual communities where a lot of men aren't stepping up and being assertive with setting strong boundaries to
Yeah.
protect the spiritual community. Because
Hmm.
the spiritual community doesn't mean you're going to be all rainbows and butterflies. Like you
Oh
have
yeah.
to be a defender too, not the
Right.
aggressor, the defender.
The Guardians.
Exactly. Well said. And to conclude the festival part, and we just got to be that embodiment. And it's the same thing recreating these experiences, right? I was always the guy burning the sage, walking around with the fan with essential oils, making sure people are good. I was that guy and I'm still that guy,
Hmm.
always. And to receive people to come and tell me, hey, thank you so much for saging the place. Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you for XYZ.
Hmm.
And I do it selflessly because I've been on the opposite side of the spectrum where that vibration, that energy that comes in with grace, it's like it just uplifts and it's like, oh my God, like this exists here.
Hmm.
And the more and more we bring that experience within those containers, it'll only give other people permission to do the same, and I don't want to say
Absolutely.
in their own way, however, just with their own essence,
Right.
you know.
That's beautiful way to say
Mhm.
that.
And lastly, to go back to what you mentioned with what she shared with you are the elder, and you're 100% correct. Like there are elders for sure within the indigenous communities and our communities in general. However, they're not out there. They're not they're not like on TV, they're not on ads, they're not on anything like that. A lot of this information is usually word of mouth, and once you kind of get access to a door that opens up for you, there's like no turning back really. It just opens up even more.
Oh
So
yeah.
the thing about these elders, we don't have access to them all the time. We truly don't.
Right.
So this is where us as just humans, as young men, as young women too, whoever is watching this, it's up to us to take that, like not take the responsibility, but to receive that responsibility to carry this wisdom to the best of our ability and walk with reverence and hold ourselves accountable. Because if not now, then when? Like, why are we gonna wait for permission?
And if not who, if not us, then who, right?
Exactly. And and
Hmm.
and last thing I want to also just add to that is it can get very controversial.
Oh yeah.
Very controversial with many topics, and a lot of people can assume, and a lot of people also forget the system that we're in. People forget the matrix that we're in of what's at play.
Right.
And because of that, I had a conversation with an elder that I have relations with. He said that a lot of elders that carry this ancestral wisdom, like they would do beautiful, amazing work, and not a lot of people will take the initiative to step into those shoes to receive that apprenticeship to carry the traditions because it's a big responsibility
Oh
because of
yeah.
distractions of new age technology, and we're all victims of it. I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm innocent of it,
Hmm.
but coming back to what I'm trying to say is the fact that like it's just it's if not like I don't even know where to go with this, to be honest, because it's all over the place. But to come a focus to conclude and really just ground it in, going back to the controversy, it's the little things that really matter.
Hmm.
It's the little things that really matter of how can we share this without draining ourselves. That's
Right.
the key.
Right.
That's the key because we need something to fall back on to take care of ourselves at the end of the day.
For
Because
sure.
this is just a service. It's not a career. Whatever we're talking about here, it's not a career, it's a service at the end of the day, you know. However, I do mention to people, I'm like, if it's a service, if you're late, like on that flat line, great, you could keep going. If you have the support, great, keep that prayer going. But if it gets to a point where you're just draining your life force, your time, your essence, everything, and it's not being reciprocated, that's a time to step back and evaluate and ground and ask for support. That's something I had to learn the hard way, you know, where I was giving too much of myself. And that's the biggest lesson and teaching I got from Wachuma, by the way, my
Mm.
first sitting, that I need to receive.
And Wachuma is another word for San Pedro, right?
Correct. Wachuma is the term from the Quechua.
Mm-hmm.
That's the proper term in that language. And San Pedro actually was, so Wachuma was named San Pedro, which is Saint Peter,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a Catholic name. It's a Catholic saint, and he's basically, the holder of the keys to the kingdom of heaven, pretty much. So they kind of disguise it in that way, like many other Mesoamerican
Mm.
cultures that disguise a lot of their gods, deities, goddesses with many other names,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'll leave it at that.
And just for the people that don't know what San Pedro and Wachuma is, it's a psychedelic or an entheogenic cactus.
Correct. It's
Mm-hmm.
correct. So it's a tall spine cactus, and there's different varieties, different subspecies, and it's primarily it's from Peru. That's its original origin from Peru, and of course that medicine traveled from different parts of the country or a continent, and now you'll find it here. Well, not just here in North America, but you'll find it everywhere around the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because people trade, people send seeds, people grow.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of different subspecies and varieties that have different properties and different experiences, really depending on the origins of it really in the
Mm-hmm.
species. So
Yeah, and with San Pedro, uh, it can be administered as a powder, right? Some people dehydrate it. Some people work with it as almost like a soup, right? Like they boil it because there's certain um, breakdowns of the chemical bonds that need to happen before it can be taken, right?
so that's a great analogy. And from my experience from receiving the medicine and sitting with it in meditation and prayer, uh there's different ways to work with it, right? There's a whole process of, yes, cutting it up a very specific way. And by the way, you can find all this information on YouTube. By the
Hmm.
way, guys, like you could literally find all this information on YouTube if you're curious with how it's made. Now, I'm not here to promote of how to process it, but I will just share my experience with how I received it. So yes, you could cut it up. You could, basically cook the cactus into a tea. Really depends on how long you cook it and through the process of the extraction of the mescaline, which is basically, what's the best way I can describe it? I'm trying to see if I could get something here. So,
Just
all
a
right. So,
quick disclaimer. Uh,
okay.
I would not recommend anybody sitting with it without a shaman or a medicine man or woman.
Correct.
Just to really emphasize that for anybody listening.
Correct. And lastly, to piggyback off that, like I've never sat with it recreationally in that way. It's only been in prayer, it's only been in ceremony, and I've experienced other people that have sat with it recreationally, and to each their own. Like that's their path, that's their way. It's just from my experience, especially now as I've gotten deeper in this path, like it's really important to be mindful of where and how you're sitting with the spirit of the medicine, you
Hmm.
know. So to give you a little bit more of a context, so let's just say this is the cactus, right? Tall
Hmm.
cactus, just a can of coconut water.
Hmm. Right.
So basically this is the core,
Hmm.
right? And then the spines, and but the thing is, the skin right here or this rim right
Hmm.
here, it'll be like all green and the rest will be white. So
Mm.
all the mescaline, all that entheogenic chemical compound is right there in that thin layer right here,
Hmm.
right? Now the thing is about the cover or the surface layer of the cactus, there's a thin plastic film that you might want to remove, and you could see a big difference with how clear it is versus how green the cactus really is. And
Mm.
that green stuff, like I mentioned, that's where the medicine is at. Now, I'm not saying that the actual core or the white part is not medicine either. There's definitely medicine in it as well. However, the main component is definitely on that greener, outside skin. From my understanding, that's how you can brew it. You can also dry that part of the cactus with the dehydrator and just, pulverize like anything else, and you can consume it in that way. Now, from my experience, I know there's some people and different medicine men from Peru that cook the medicine for days.
Oh,
So the
wow.
becomes like a really thick paste, like really, really thick paste where, good luck.
Right.
Good luck.
You're
It's
definitely,
really good.
yeah, you're definitely with something like that, you don't need much.
It's like syrup at that point, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So for my personal experience and recommendations, the easiest way to consume it would probably be the tea.
Mm-hmm.
It's already, you just drink it. It's easily processed through your body versus the powder. However, the powder can be a hit or miss depending how potent the medicine is
Mm-hmm.
and how they dried it and how they processed it and everything like that. Now, when it comes to ceremony of how to sit with the medicine, there's three different ways that I've learned from an elder from Machu Picchu. And he mentioned there's three ways that they sit with it or work with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can either sit in meditation around a fire, you can either go hiking, or you could sit with the medicine in a hot spring.
Mm, okay.
I've never experienced the hot spring. Actually, I take that back. I have. I have
Okay.
experienced hot spring. Yeah, I take that back. I actually have. And funny, interesting. Actually, I actually drank the medicine. It was a ceremony. We drank the medicine with coconut water and just raw cactus.
Mm-hmm.
Like raw cactus. They just blended it and we drank it as a nourishment and we sat in ceremony and in celebration of life for the summer equinox, excuse me, summer solstice, not equinox.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very beautiful gathering to say the least. And that was the only time I ever sat with the medicine in its raw form without it being um cooked. And in my opinion, I don't know if I'm making anything up. I'm just kind of analyzing it. I think when it's raw, it's harder for your body to process the
Mm, that makes
actual
sense.
medicine,
Yeah, that makes a lot of
versus it
sense.
being cooked. When it's cooked and when it's like dried, it's a lot easier to consume and a lot easier on your stomach. That's
Okay.
really the case.
So
However,
did you
when it's
have a lot
raw,
of pain?
honestly, when I drink it raw, it was very clean.
Okay.
Very, very clean, and it really you could tell like how clean the medicine is or how it's like how it's worked with based off on how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So my experience with it being raw was very interesting because like anything that's raw and fresh, it still has that chi, that life
Oh
force, that
yeah.
so it just the experience was very beautiful to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very beautiful to say the least. And so the main component in it, that is the active chemical compound, that is the entheogenic part, the psychedelic to say the least for anybody that doesn't understand what entheogenic means, is mescaline.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that mescaline is found in that cactus specifically. It's also found in peyote. And peyote is another medicine that I really love and I love to sit with. And at the moment, actually, I'm associated with a nonprofit organization called Sacred.net, and we are basically a peyote. We basically are educating people about peyote, how to conserve it, how to
Mm,
protect it,
beautiful.
and it's great. It's my brother from Arizona, and I got involved with it just for the movement and the prayer. However, I just know there's an abundance of medicine. Nevertheless, it's just good to educate people on it versus
Absolutely.
just taking. I'd rather educate people to build a relationship with the sacrament versus just taking, you know?
Absolutely. And one thing that is interesting is that the peyote is very feminine. It's like a very round, bulbous cactus. And then the San Pedro is very, very phallic. It's long and tall.
Mm.
And I've never worked with San Pedro before. So but I've heard that San Pedro is much more of a feminine experience, and the peyote is more of a masculine experience.
That's a great analogy. And in my honest opinion, um, it's all scenario based. It's all based on who's orchestrating it,
Okay,
right? It all depends because every ceremony is different. Every
absolutely.
ceremony is different. Every lineage is different. I've sat in a TP meeting, and this is all in regards of the sacrament Wachuma, not peyote at the moment. I've sat in a TP meeting with Wachuma before.
Hmm.
I've sat in an outdoor meeting with Wachuma that is very closely orchestrated to how TP meetings are ran, or even like the Wiwarika ways, you know. I've sat it with it in just meditation. I've sat with it with hiking, hot
Hmm.
springs. I just mentioned that already, you know, and every experience is different. Now, the one experience that I've had that was very interesting was twice, and it was orchestrated by individuals that weren't specifically from any lineage. And, for what it's worth, it was a beautiful experience, nevertheless. Um, I can just definitely see the difference with that kind of orchestration versus being something a little bit more related to the roots of
Hmm.
like ancestral wisdom.
Hmm.
And they both have their own beautiful, unique ways of doing its work. I'm not saying one is wrong and one is correct. I'm just saying they're both very different experiences,
Hmm.
and everyone has their own taste with how they want to sit with medicine, and the medicine itself is really the master. The person who's orchestrating is just really the driver of the vehicle, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, to really just tap into what you mentioned, yeah, it really depends on who's orchestrating it because the experience can be very, very feminine in it if it's like not too structured, and it can
Okay.
be very masculine if there's a structure and a sequence and but when it comes to the energy from like not to compare like that one's better than the other, they're both different, but they're very similar in its own way. For example, Wachuma can come in like any medicine, but specifically Wachuma comes in a little bit more gently,
Right.
and it comes in like in waves.
I think
Like
that that's what I meant by feminine.
Mhm. Yeah, so it comes in waves, like it'll come in and it's like, "Oh, I'm here. Hello, I'm
Hmm.
here with you.
Hmm.
Greetings, welcome." And then before you know it, you're in it.
Right.
You're in
Right.
it, and you're going through your process, you're thinking, and whatever thoughts come up, the shadow work. And of course, it all depends on the orchestration, whether you're involved with the fire, with music, with dancing, like I mentioned, it all depends on lineage and who's running and not running, who's orchestrating the medicine. Now,
And
when it
it's
comes
not.
to
I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna ask. It's not so hallucinogenic, like a mushroom trip, right? It's more
Correct.
internal, right?
It's more like body and emotional.
Okay. Okay.
And in my honest opinion, I'm very sensitive to many things in general.
Hmm.
A little goes a long ways. And I try to encourage people, it's like, hey, like, you don't have to take a lot to experience whatever you need to experience.
Hmm.
And honestly, this medicine it's so beautiful. And sometimes uh, let me backtrack a little bit. Ever since I started to garden and grow my own medicine just to have it, I started to build a relationship with it. Like, oh my God, like you need patience for this medicine. You need a lot of patience for this medicine to grow, to cultivate, to take care of it. And once I started building that relationship with it, I really started to sit with it even more and have that connection. And once I had that natural connection, I didn't need to take or receive a lot of it. Like for me, I'm fine with a little bit.
Hmm.
I'm already connected to that spirit because I walk that path of, that reverence of being more still, more patient. Now, am I perfect? Absolutely not. I have my moments. Now, the beautiful thing about it is I'm conscious of my mistakes. I'm like, oh, I could do better next time,
You
right?
have an awareness of it. Yeah.
Correct. But to kind of come back to the main point of this conversation and topic you brought up, the fact is like, yeah, it's not. a hallucinogenic. I tell people like, yo, like that's not the point of this medicine. The
Right.
point of this medicine is to help you be a little bit more open to that connection to yourself and to that elemental that is in front of you,
Hmm.
you know? And I always tell people like anything else, if you really just sit with it and just close your eyes and just meditate, pray, whatever, however you want to sing or anything like that, or receive the music, it can definitely take you to these realms. But we could do that even without the medicine. It just makes it a little easier. That's
Yeah, it
that's
just opens the veil a little bit more, right?
correct. That
Hmm.
is correct. Now, this medicine can get purgative if it's processed, from my understanding, based off from professionals that I've spoken with, if it's processed with the core, like the center core of the actual cactus,
Hmm.
and or if it has like the plasticky film within it, it's hard for
Okay.
your body to process it.
So,
You
so,
know,
so most likely people are going to purge when it's
it can
processed that
happen
way.
if they drink enough. You know,
Okay.
I try to encourage people to, if they really want to do deep work, I'm like, hey man, I say go for it. Like if you really want to get well, like go for it. You know.
I think one thing that's really important for people to understand, as I like to call it, instead of understand,
Mhm.
is that purging is a way of the body to clear energy. And it's actually really important for us to do at times because it's the way that these medicines are helping our body understand that, okay, there's this energy stuck here and it needs to come out, right? Because
Mhm.
part of that is affecting us potentially in a big negative way. It can cause disease, it can cause illness, it can cause all these things if it stays in the body. It's better to just get it out and throw up for a while and just get it all out versus keeping it in and potentially getting really sick.
100%. And one thing I like to share, and I learned this throughout, my journey on the red road is when we're purging, I like to say, oh, you're gonna go get well. Like you're getting well, right?
Hmm.
And I'll share a little story with my experience with not just rapé in general, but Wachuma. There's been moments where they serve me hape while I'm in the medicine, and it takes me in deeper, and that's where all that energy comes out, and I literally feel, and I would only know what I experienced. Of course, I'm not here to explain what exactly it was, but I literally felt that energy being taken out while I was getting well. And
Mm.
after that, my heart just like opened up.
Hmm.
And I feel like all this heavy energy was just taken off because I knew energetically it was just removed. And I understand that I understand that this conversation we're having isn't for everybody, because they'll receive this message and be like, what the heck are these guys talking about? There are realms, there are dimensions, there are veils that are here with us, even light spectrums, color spectrums that we can't see to the naked eye. However, we know deep down inside we all have instincts with other things that are present, right? And it's the same
Right.
thing with our thoughts. It's the same thing with people telling us things, because our nervous system receives these messages and it holds on to them. So the thing about these medicines too, I'm gonna tap into more of the logical sense, the physical part. Wachuma and peyote, like there's a lot of alkaloids in it. There's a lot of beautiful alkaline substances in it to balance out your body.
Hmm.
So it will literally kill parasites. It will literally make you stronger. It will literally give you more life. So
Kill
that's
cancer cells, you name it, with an alkaline environment.
100%. And I'm not here to claim this is a one and done healing medicine for everybody. It can, of course, you got to also look at that life outside of ceremony or the medicine itself. How do you eat? How do you sleep? What do you like inhale? Like, what is your environment like, right?
Hmm.
Now, going back to the environment and your body absorbing and holding on to these traumas, right? There's a reason for anybody here that has been in ceremony. There's a reason why people ball their eyes out. They're going through the process because these thoughts are coming up and they're going through it, and the medicine just helps them surrender to it even more. And the moment we surrender to that expression, to that emotion, we let it go, we release it. And the
Hmm.
moment we let go of that feeling, of that emotion, keyword motion, it's an actual feeling in our body tends to open up. And when we open up even more, this is why when a lot of people sit with a lot like medicine in general, right, in the ceremony way, they feel lighter, they feel more open, they feel more open-hearted. It's because not just because of the medicine, but the fact that they process their emotions. Now, one thing I also learned in ceremony, depending on the orchestration, is that there's a lot of expression happening there. The singing, the
Mm,
dancing,
hmm.
the receiving of those expressions, the messages, right, that cause those shifts.
Hmm.
And this is something I also mention people. It's like the ceremony and the medicine isn't just the actual plant itself. Like there's other tools that you can learn in these ceremonies that you can apply and integrate into your everyday life.
Absolutely.
And like and to conclude that a little bit and to kind of refocus is, like I sing my prayers. Like there's peyote style songs that I sing. There's Icaros. There's an orchestration of how I work with the fire. Like it's a way that I carry myself. It's a discipline and it helps me stay aligned with my own spiritual path, which is whatever that looks like. I'm just trying to be a good person at the end of the day, you
Absolutely.
know. And I'll just conclude it with that right there.
Yeah, and I think that's beautifully said. I would just add on that while you were talking, this came up that, you mentioned people crying and releasing and tapping into those traumas and feeling lighter afterwards. And one thing that it took me a little while to realize is that there are many ways to purge and clear the body energetically of these of energy, right? Because tears, all those things are energy at the end of the day. So I just wanted to mention like tears are a great way to purge, right? Sweating's a great way to purge. Um, Energetically purging, where nothing comes out, but you're making the motions like you're puking and you're like your body's moving or convulsing, but nothing's coming out. No food is coming out. It's just energy. That's a great way to purge. Another great way is shaking. Like sometimes people dance and shake. That's another way to move that emotion, energy in motion, right? Another way is spitting. People don't think about that, but spitting's another way to move the energy. Another way is burping, farting. Uh, what am I missing? Those are some of the main ones, but just like any way that your body releases is a way of shifting that energy and becoming lighter and releasing it. And one thing that I learned pretty early on in my path is that it's important to channel that energy that's being released from from me to either creator or to back into the earth to get alchemized. Because sometimes people don't do that, and then that energy just transfers over to another person or a space like a room or a piece of clothing. All that can get absorbed by our external world if we don't channel it into the right place.
100%. And, just to tap into a little bit of that. So I do workshops in facilities for people that are recovering from substance abuse
Hmm.
and alcohol and other mental health issues. And there's a lot of things that bring into this containers, whether it's like I even bring ceremony in there. Like what are you talking about? Like tobacco. A lot of them
Hmm.
work with a lot of tobacco. So I give them I provide a tool for them like, hey, like this is how I work with tobacco and why, and like they all receive it really well. Like, whoa, like that's super cool, man. And believe it or not, there's actually a lot of natives that I meet in there. A lot of all kinds of natives, Comanches, Apaches, Cherokees, Dene, you name it. Like there's so many relatives that I meet in there that come from medicine families, that come from sun dancers, stomp dancers, like I could go on, and to really see that and to understand that there's a suppression of the spirit, and it's a whole other subject. But I'm sharing this to give you a context of what I bring into these containers, which is an expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I go into these containers, is another subject. It really depends on the flow of the space itself. I talk about wellness and bioenergetics,
Mm-hmm.
which is the connection to the mind, to the body to the mind. And in other words, how can we use our breathing techniques? Of course, breath work is a great way to move energy too.
Mm-hmm.
How can we use our expression of our voice, expressions of how we receive, and how can we use movement, right, to release this tension,
Right.
right? Because when we have a relationship with our body, if we recognize how our body reacts when we get emotional, right?
Right.
We start recognizing and understanding ourselves in that way and analyzing and responding before we react, it can definitely make a lot of differences in your lives, you know. And the thing is, a lot of people don't know or have these tools to express and release. So what that causes, it causes a lot of mental compression
Mm-hmm.
that can manifest into sickness, that can manifest into mental health, into snapping. Like you hit it right on the nail too. It's all relations to it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And the thing is, um, it's all, if you really connect the dots, it's in everything, right? There's many different ways you could approach it, but this connects to ceremony as well. The
Mm-hmm.
music, the breathing to ground, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the singing and the dancing and all the things, you know. So through that healing, through that release, it really helps people feel lighter, like I mentioned earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I do apply into these workshops, and even sometimes I talk about it casually, which is people like ourselves right now, right? This interview that we're having.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is really important to be informed with that. Some of us may know it as somatics, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like somatic healing. That's another term, right? If you want to
Yeah.
get really deep into it.
Or
Um,
myofascial unwinding. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of modalities that incorporate a lot of these things that allow for the body to release that trauma. But at the end of the day, ceremony and breath work and yoga and all these things that a lot of us do in the spiritual community, at the end of the day, it's all about that inner work to help us clear out any aspects that are impeding on us living the highest timeline, the our purpose, our way of being on this planet, and to have more awareness, to have more freedom, whatever that looks like for people, right? To not be so engulfed in the matrix, and
yeah,
to be able to make our own decisions, to recognize when somebody's blatantly lying to our face, whether that be the news or a neighbor. You know what I mean?
I just got chills when you said that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
saw me, like, whoa, I felt that. Oh
yeah.
man. You know, and it's interesting because just to kind of backtrack with like the festival scene, right?
Right.
It's basically like there's it's a ceremony.
Oh
Like they
yeah.
have opening ceremonies. Like for people that have never experienced a festival, they're don't think every rave is the same. Absolutely not. Every music genre is different, just like every lineage is different, right? I'm not here to
Hmm.
compare apples to oranges. However, it's a ceremony. There's music, there's dancing, there's connection, there's all kinds of things in it. And these spaces are definitely healing because people are dancing or hanging other things. But this is where we can connect those bridges of being that embodiment. And even though you may not shift the thousands of people that are there, you might shift that one life that makes a huge difference. You know, I always
Absolutely.
tell people like be mindful of how you carry yourself in any container because you don't know who's going to be there.
Absolutely.
It could be that one person that has that power that can move mountains, that really connects with who you are because of how you carry yourself. And it's like, wow, like I want what that person has. How can I learn from him or her?
And what are
How
they
can I
doing
support?
different, right?
Exactly. How can I support them?
Hmm.
And reason I'm sharing is because that's exactly in the position I'm in today
Hmm.
because of all these tribulations of the shadow, the darkness I went through in my early 20s and whatnot, and I'm not gonna get too deep into it. Everything I do in this moment, it's because of networking.
Hmm.
Of course, there's work behind it, 100%. It's not all. It's not about what you do. It's about what you do and who you know.
Yeah,
Like,
because it all becomes
you know,
magnetic at some point. The more the more work that I've done on myself, the easier it is for me to magnetize people that see me, like really see my soul, and that really resonate and can hear what I'm saying when I talk. So I don't have to, I can be myself completely, and these people get me, you know?
exactly. And lastly, I say this a lot, and for anybody that has never heard this, but I didn't create this, but it's a good one. Your vibe attracts your tribe. In other words, like the truth will also set you free,
Hmm.
with healthy boundaries and everything like that. It's just going to create that protective veil around you to filter out people that aren't meant to vibe with you. And that's fine. Just because someone doesn't vibe with you doesn't mean they're bad people, doesn't mean they're not doing the work. There's so many people in the spiritual community that I personally don't vibe with, not because
Hmm.
of that I don't like them, not because that they're bad people, not because they're not doing good work. It's just the connection's not there. It's plain and simple. Like, don't force it. It's
Exactly.
that plain and simple. Just keep walking your path. Pay attention. Pay attention to what is calling you, but also be mindful of where you're applying your presence, your time, your essence, your medicine, right? Because the thing
Absolutely.
is, the further you go down this path, the more and more people are going to want your time and energy.
Absolutely.
And that's where that time, that boundary comes in of, hey, like, this is my schedule. Give me 2 weeks ahead notice or whatever. This is just an example. Because like if you don't have structure, especially as men, I'm just speaking for us men here,
Yeah,
creates chaos and it gets us ungrounded. And we without structure, there can't be a flow. Now, of
exactly.
course, you can have a blueprint and you walk into the facility and it doesn't go exactly as planned, but guess what? You just make adjustments. At least you have a
Exactly.
plan to kind of follow, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
But these are just my opinions. It's not the truth, but there's some truth to it.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And with the men's work that I've been doing for many years, over 7 years now, it took it took that structure for me to create for myself in order to take off that stress and anxiety that I would feel because I didn't have that structure as much as I needed to. And it also allows other people, especially the feminine, to feel safer when there is that structure. And it allows for, and all of us have the feminine and the masculine inside of us. And so it just allows for that flow, like you were saying, to flow easier because now you're not just like a big puddle. You actually have you have a canal for that stream to flow down.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a good practice, a great discipline too. And there definitely needs to be a little bit more of that in any community whatsoever. It doesn't have to be the spirit community, just community in general. So, and it's really up to us as leaders, like this position of leadership that we're both in. I'm not saying that we're better than anybody else. That's not the case. The truth is, it's a responsibility. And when you're in this position of leadership, you're gonna get a lot of eyes on you, a
Hmm.
lot of eyes on you. You know what I mean? And they're gonna look for the things you're not doing correct. And
Or
they're gonna throw
perfect.
arrows at you. They're gonna just say all this negative stuff. So I would receive a lot of that for different reasons. and it's all beautiful medicine at the end of the day. And it's just like, for me, when there's people that are just looking for negativity versus finding the solution of, hey, like, let's work together and let's figure this out, let's make this better, versus just negativity, 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 I block that out. Like, I don't got time for that. I'm good.
Hmm.
And I learned that through amazing, successful entrepreneurs. Like, I'm not here to treat this path as a business, but it's also interwoven with my life, and that's something I just want to share this with anybody here. You're not meant to please everybody.
No,
That's the freaking truth.
right.
You know,
That's a
so,
big, that's a
so
big lesson.
yeah, 100%.
Huge lesson.
100%. And the beautiful thing is that the more I stood in that power, in that assertiveness and that boundary of self-respect, um, people will see it as aggression. People will see it as toxic masculinity. Is like, no, dude, it's proper masculinity that's been missing for some time that I'm now putting into practice to protect not just myself energetically, but also my community, people I vibe with, people I care about, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I'll just leave it at that. It's just a good reminder for anybody watching or receiving this message here.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, like you said, it's a big responsibility to be in these positions. And one thing that is really important is that we become mirrors.
Mm,
Everybody is a mirror for each other, but people that are doing really deep work become a really clear mirror for others. And so sometimes that brings up things inside of that person that they haven't faced yet, or a program that's been running for potentially a huge chunk of their life. And then they have to face that, either work it out and work through it and address it and clear it, or from my experience, those lessons come back around even more intensely the next time around. And life is like a spiral, it keeps going. And either we get, I'll just speak for myself, either I get a chance to see that I've passed the lesson because I'm no longer triggered by that experience, that I'll have an awareness, oh wow, that was something 5 years ago would have made me really upset or angry, or I will, it'll trigger me again and I'll have to readdress it and take a deeper look at it and see, like, okay, why is this coming back into my life in this way?
100%. 100%. And to kind of add on to that and just conclude that is everything's a cycle,
Hmm.
right? Sun goes up, sun goes down. Spring, summer, fall, winter, repeat,
Hmm.
right? And the same thing, it goes back and forth, push, pull, etc. And let's say this can, right, is a lesson that we
Right.
tend to keep messing up, and we keep spiraling. We keep repeating that lesson, and maybe every single time we meet that lesson throughout that timeline, we may or may not get better at it slowly, and then we start to kind of like raise above it, and then until
Hmm.
we finally complete that task.
Right.
You could spiral up and raise your frequency if you want to call it that way, or just kind of like pass it and finally move forward to the next lesson.
Hmm.
Or you keep repeating it until you keep sabotaging yourself and you just go down a spiral of poop.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really important thing to mention. And also, these deep dark nights of the soul that you mentioned you had, right? Every single person that's on the path that I've met has had at least one of these dark nights of the soul, as they call it, where, there's this darkness that we have to face, this depression at times, right? And what some people don't realize is that the more work you do, it starts to become less of a dip into that space, right? Like the graph starts to go up and up in that vibration, and then those dips become smaller and smaller the more we work on ourselves. Because for me, it becomes so clear that, okay, I'm having a little dip here. That doesn't dictate my life. It's just temporary. It'll come and it'll go, and then I can keep on moving upwards and onwards. And the deeper I look at myself, the deeper the work I do, the the less of those that occur and the less frequent those occur in my life.
100%. Because we become conscious and aware of our own patterns of
Exactly.
why do I keep repeating this? Why do I keep attracting XYZ? And it's just like you really reflect. Like this is what I mean by also stepping back and really reflecting and responding versus reacting.
Exactly.
And the biggest lesson I received this year is, like anything else, you can't change anybody, and
Hmm.
you
That's a big
have to
one.
you can't change anybody. You could only, encourage. You can only kind of like point a direction, but it's just like if it gets to a point where they're not in alignment with your dharma, your path, and it's only kind of like causing restriction, you gotta let it go.
Hmm.
You gotta let it go and really respect yourself. Respect,
Exactly.
like self-respect is key, and that's one of the biggest lessons that I received this year, and I really had to step into that frame and really just have a very firm boundary. And through that lesson, it was very empowering of like, oh wow, I never thought I would have the capacity to like really step into this,
Hmm.
you know. And that's my lesson of the year.
That's a huge one. That's a really big one. Um, I think just to wrap everything up, it's like it all comes back to that internal work.
Mm,
Looking because all we can do is change ourselves, work on ourselves, and then other people can either step up to it, match that frequency, or not. They can either choose love or fear. At the end of the day, it all comes down to that. Every decision we make, when you trickle it down and put it through the titration system, it's a decision of love versus fear. And if we keep choosing love and keep vibrating from our heart and upward and onward, then we just keep attracting those people that are aligned with that. So, um,
100.
thank you so much for joining me today, brother, joining the Spiritual Teachers Podcast. It's been such an honor. I feel like we barely skimmed the surface, so I believe there'll be another part two to this. So, uh,
Oh, 100%.
yeah,
100% part two.
yeah,
This is, dude, this was beautiful. I had a great time. I think you learned a lot about me just by this 1 hour or
for sure.
so. And thank you for holding the context in the container like that. I'm really looking forward to the second part.
Amazing, brother. Thank you so much. And until next time,
Until
big love.
next time.